Welcome to Talent Buzz, where I talk about talent acquisition with fast-growing SaaS and tech companies. Today, I'm joined by Jan Goetz, the CEO and co-founder of IQM Quantum Computers. And today we are talking about their journey, scaling the team to more than 300 people within 5 years. A lot of great learnings about hiring and culture. And let's start the episode with a quick introduction to IQM Quantum Computers by Jan.
What we do as IQM is we develop and build quantum computers, and then we provide them to customers either as on-premises systems, so really we ship the computers, or as a cloud. So from a conceptual point of view, this is like normal computer industry. And then you might ask the question, okay, why do we actually need the quantum part in it? What is it, this strange quantum part? And here actually the clue is that we have as a society, we have so many problems which are so complicated and so big that we know even with the biggest supercomputers, we will never be able to solve them. So these questions will always remain unanswered unless we find a completely new way of computing. And quantum computing actually offers exactly this. So it's a completely new way of computing, which offers you to solve problems which otherwise will never be solved. And those can be, for example, in simulating complex molecules, which we need in drug discovery. So we have all seen in the pandemic how important it is to develop a new vaccine fast. And actually a lot of computing power went in there and a lot of GPUs have been burned there. But still, we cannot really simulate those molecules. Or if you think about optimization problems, and if you want to optimize logistics and make sure that cars arrive at the destination faster or so, often these problems are so complex that even big supercomputers cannot do it. So this is really what's all about quantum. It's building new type of computers, which then bring us solutions to really the real challenging problems. And you can then also go towards climate change. You can go to basic physics. Where are we coming from? So really a lot of interesting questions are so far unanswered. And we want to provide the computers that help in solving these issues.
Very interesting. How did you come up with the idea? Did you just wake up one day where like, okay, I want to build a quantum computer, or like, what's your background in a way? Like, how did you decided to found this company?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of quantum computing, of course, doesn't come from us. It's a kind of old idea, if you want to say so. Richard Feynman said already in 1981, a famous physicist, said, the world is so complex, damn it. So if you want to simulate the nature in itself, you better make it quantum. So this was kind of the idea. He didn't use the word quantum computer, but he thought we can build systems based on quantum physics to simulate the complex nature. And since then, people have been thinking very hard, is this possible? First on a theoretical point of view, and then in the early 2000s in the university labs, people have started actually trying to build these machines. And I entered the field in 2011 when I, at the university, was doing my thesis on quantum computing. And I was just excited about this because it was something groundbreaking, something new. I then did a PhD in the field. I did a postdoc, which brought me to Finland. I came to Finland in 2017, worked at Aalto University for 2 years. And then around this time, 2018, 2019, we saw that in the US, actually, there were already big startups being founded, and also big established companies like Google and IBM had announced that they're building quantum computers. So we thought, okay, actually there is a need also in Europe to have a kind of really powerful, big quantum computing company that can provide quantum computers then on a global level. And this was the idea in 2018 when we started with the planning to create a spin-out from Aalto University and VTT. And to really be kind of the European counterpart that can build then quantum computers and distribute it on a global scale.
Okay. And I imagine, now you of course have a big team already in place, and building something like that takes time, takes a lot of talented people. But you had some co-founders in the beginning as well. Was it that you basically found those through Aalto as well, or how did the core team came together in the beginning?
Yeah, so actually in the very early days, it wasn't me driving the project. So we are 4 co-founders. And one of them, Mikko Möttönen, is the professor at Aalto University who I was working with. Mikko is still a professor at Aalto, and he's still running the research group, and a lot of great science and great talent is coming out of his group. And in the beginning, it was really him pushing this together, and he was kind of bringing the four founders together. However, we have Kuan there. He was in Australia back at that time, but he has been working for a long time in universities with Mikko, and also I had some overlap with Kuan, so I knew him already. We have done some research at Aalto together. And then Juha Vartiainen, our fourth co-founder, he did a PhD together with Mikko in the very early days, and then he went to industry, had kind of regular jobs at industry, but then he came back. So the founding team was really assembled by Mikko, and since he then had to kind of stay at the university and is still doing the great research there, I was then at some point taking over and became the CEO and was really leading the development maybe late 2018 or so.
I've been personally thinking a lot about, co-founder relationships, how to find the best possible co-founders. And, one thing that comes across quite often is that it's important to have a lot of diversity in the founding team as well. But based on what you're seeing, it sounds to me that your founding team, of course, a little bit different backgrounds, but still sounds like, a lot of PhDs, very technical, and a lot of technical knowledge. But how about the kind of business side of things? Because eventually you are still a business. So did you have that knowledge in the founding team, or did you at some point hire more kind of commercial people on the team?
No, that's true. Actually, all four founders have a PhD in quantum computing. So it's very technical, not a lot of diversity on this end. Of course, we're coming from different regions in the world. But yeah, I think, of course, you need then to bring in new people which complement this. But ultimately, it's actually a mindset thing. And I think many startups struggle, even if they bring commercial people in, because the founders don't have the right mindset. And I think this is something that makes us special, that we said from the very beginning, hey, we want to build products and we want to commercialize products. And many people said, oh, you're crazy. Quantum computers are useless and will be useless for the next 10 years. No one will ever buy them. But basically, we said, no, that's not true. Even with these very early machines that we built already today, you can do great stuff. You can do education, you can do science. If you're an industry company, you can actually create IP, you can test your applications. So there's a lot of stuff you can do. And this was our idea. And we took always a little bit the analogy from SpaceX. If you look at SpaceX, the first rockets, they sold to NASA, to kind of government entities. And this is what we did. And actually, most of the early rockets, I think, in SpaceX, they just exploded early on. So there was really not a lot of use. And I think this is also in quantum computing what has happened. So the first computers that we sold were actually to government entities or research institutions, big supercomputing centers. And maybe they didn't have yet a commercial value, but actually you can do great science, you can do great R&D, and of course also the talent education is a super important part. And we had always this mindset as founders that we said, okay, we really want to commercialize deep tech from day one. And we began kind of operational with the company in 2019. And already then, after 1 year, we had actually sold the first computer. So I think this is a great success story, how you can commercialize deep tech and bring this product mindset in, even though you're very technical as a team.
Yeah. And when I prepared for this episode, I went through some of your funding rounds, for example, the 128 million from the World Fund, regarding this. And I imagine, building something like it takes time, but I think what you mentioned there is a good example on, kind of how quickly you can make it actually a business, maybe not a profitable at that point, but still like, a business and going towards there. But maybe, regarding getting a lot of funding rounds, when you raise funding, did it mean basically, just hiring a lot of technical people to your team quickly, or kind of how did it go?
I mean, we have a company plan, which is quite detailed. It includes the financial plan, but also hiring plan. And we always made our plans so that there is a good continuity, and we didn't see the funding rounds so much as kind of marks in the plan, but it was a smooth transition. But of course, we needed to get new funding in to make sure that then also we can continue doing this. So if you look at our hiring, actually, we have been hiring in a quite linear fashion, so to say. So if you look at how our head count has been growing, it has been quite linear over the first 4 years or so. Then maybe around last year, we slowed down a bit because we reached around 300 people. And this is another kind of size where you have to create different structures, maybe different way of working. So we said, okay, we take a breath and we pause for a while. Now we are hiring again. But this was our approach. And I think another challenge, of course, is that most of the company in the early days existed during COVID times. So anyways, the hiring and building the team, all of this was done through Zoom, which is, again, yet another different thing. But overall, we didn't see these funding rounds so much as kind of big changes in our plans, but we had, and we still have, this one big plan that we are executing, which is just a continuous plan, which should bring us then to profitability, and hiring the best people, the best technical teams is just one part of it.
Exactly. And you mentioned there, growing the team to around 300 people. That basically means, like, if we would hire linearly, like bringing in around, one new person each week. So quite a lot of hiring. And would be very interesting to hear your thoughts, because I've chatted with a lot of founders, regarding hiring people. And typically, in the beginning, hiring first 10, 20 people, founders are heavily included in the hiring. They are typically the ones reaching out to potential candidates. They are the ones, interviewing candidates, making the decisions. But I imagine that at some point when the hiring goes up, you need someone else to do it. You need to use your time as a founder somewhere else. So how did it go for you? Did you at some point kind of step down from hiring and let other people to do that one?
Yeah. I mean, me personally, anyways, I was only really involved in the, let's say, C-level or top-level hires. But actually, we did it still a bit differently in IQM, because even before we started as founders, we reached out to a group of maybe 20 to 30 people that we knew from our network, from our ecosystem. And we told them, hey, we are going to raise money for a new company. If we get the money, are you willing to join? And then we gave them also some ownership in the company. So there was, of course, very little risk, because either we got the money and then they would join, or we didn't get the money and then they would just continue their normal jobs. But this means we kind of jumped over this very first phase that you mentioned, hiring the first 10 to 20 people, because we already had a group of 20 people, let's say, that we knew were great and really performing, that were joining without a hiring process, so to say. So this is kind of where we started. We were already at this group of 20-ish, and then the real hiring process started. And then basically the hiring was done mainly by Juha, one of our founders. He has hired, let's say, the first 100 people in the company. And I think he had a great way of doing it, because most of these very early hires are still with us. And this really kind of shows that we managed to bring together a group of people which share the same values, which kind of want to work with the same culture. And this is also mainly how I see my role, is kind of living this culture, being there. Of course, I'm very present towards the outside on social media or on stage or elsewhere. So this is how I see it, that I tell the story, I show people how we live and work together, what are our values. And then, of course, I hope that this creates excitement among people we want to hire. And then we have a regular hiring process, of course. Meanwhile, we have such a great talent acquisition team. And they're working day and night to bring the best people in, but then, of course, also to make sure that the onboarding works well, so that when the newcomers join, that they really get the kind of touch and feel of IQM from day one, so that they have a smooth transition and that they live our values, that they understand our culture. And I think this is working really great. So this is what we established after around, let's say when you are finished with this first 100 hires, we started to have a talent acquisition team, and we are doing it since then. And as I said, this is really working well. And I think, of course, there are always some mistakes when you do hires, but overall, if you look at the team now and how many are with us already since the very early days, I think the team has done an amazing job.
What I really liked was the beginning. I've been talking with a lot of founders, and typically I always actually kind of recommend them. Basically, I talk about building talent pipeline, but basically, exactly what you meant, like already talking with people before the funding rounds to know that you have people willing to join. And I think it makes actually raising the funding round a bit easier as well, when you can show for the investors that, hey, okay, if we get this round, here are 10, 15 people that are willing to join our company. I think it's kind of same as for a PlayStation, having a wait list for the new PlayStation. You're going to have people waiting forward for the moment when they can buy. And I think kind of taking that approach to recruitment is brilliant indeed. Brilliant indeed. What about, you mentioned there words like culture and values, and you have 300 people in a lot of different countries, different time zones. How do you balance that one? Like if you think about your culture in Finland where you are, or some other countries, do you feel like you have same culture, for example, between different offices, or are there different cultures in different different offices, or how do you balance that?
I mean, it starts even one step before, because even within, let's say, our office here in Finland, we have around 50 nationalities, so really different backgrounds. And I still remember Juha saying, when we hired the first person who moved to Finland for us, you were saying, wow, now it's getting serious. We are bringing people to Finland and they move here and they come with a different background. And I think overall this is a challenge, but also an opportunity, because people, they have different cultures. If you come from Asia, it's different. Or if you maybe come from, even within Europe, if you come from Spain or if you come from Finland, you have often very different mentalities. And making these people work together, of course, requires some extra effort, because sometimes there are misunderstandings in how you are saying things or how you're doing things. But then there are also so many opportunities from having this kind of diversity, because people have the different background and they look at problems from different angles. This means they have different ways of finding solutions. And I think this is what has been very helpful for us, given that still the product that we build is a very complex thing. So it's good to have this diversity. But then, of course, yet another kind of a level comes when you then start opening offices in different locations. And our first move was to Germany. We opened the office in Munich, and this was then already during COVID times. And of course, there are then additional challenges if you have to do everything remotely. And basically, we were building up a new team in Munich, and people could not travel during these days. And so we were building up two teams in two different locations. And we tried a lot we called it one IQM, one global team. And we tried a lot to kind of make it one culture. But of course, it's challenging. And I remember then when COVID went down, we had a all company event. So we brought all people together to one place, and many people who have been working together for a year or so have never seen each other before. And then they met there for the first time. And I think it's these kind of trust building events and others, of course, as well, which then help you manage a global team. And I think this is very important, that you bring also this social aspect in. So we sometimes, of course, we bring in our people from our Singapore office or from the US, and then they meet our teams here in Europe, or they meet at conferences and they socialize. And I think this is then how you create the trust amongst the teams, that you can work together. The time zone is, of course, always a challenge that you cannot overcome, that it's now already evening in Singapore and it's middle of the night, maybe in the US. And there you have to just be practical. And we have, of course, calls sometimes a little bit later in the evening or early in the morning. This is just the price you have to pay if you are running a global organization.
Exactly. Is everyone working from an office, or do you do like hybrid work or remote? Because why I'm asking this is just I don't understand good enough. And what I mean by that is, you are a tech company for sure, but you do have a kind of hardware in a way, so something physical as well. So how does that go? Is it possible to do remote work as well?
Of course, generally it's possible. And I mean, we are a startup and we are very flexible in the way of working and very agile. But of course, we have, for example, a chip factory. So people are entering there, a clean room with these suits on. And this is nothing you can do fully remote. So you have to be there and operate the machines. So just some jobs just require, of course, that you have a physical presence. But then we have also software developers and other parts of the organization where this is not so much the case. We try to really be kind of here accommodating for our employees. And even during COVID, we had quite relaxed rules of actually coming to the office, because many of the people were kind of coming to Finland. They didn't have kind of social connections, a network. And we tried to keep the office as open as possible during COVID times. And this was very much appreciated, because people then could actually talk to someone. And now we didn't have the problem that many other founders or CEOs have, is that now the office stays empty because people are just staying at home after COVID. So we have people coming back to the office without kind of asking them or even forcing them to do. And I think this is great. And this shows also the nice office culture that we are having. So we try to be flexible. Not each job can be done fully remote. I like being in the office. I like to have these kind of coffee chats and network, especially given that I'm traveling so much. When I'm in Finland or in Munich, I try to be in the office as much as I can.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that, nowadays, if you think about hiring, you mainly participate in, C-level leadership kind of roles. But what is your thinking? Because I've been listening a lot of podcasts and a lot of discussion around, leadership hires. And should you bring leaders from outside of the organization? Or promote people within your organization? You mentioned you have a lot of people who have stayed there from the beginning, really shown their value for the company. You kind of know exactly what you are getting from those persons. So what is kind of your approach? Let's say next week you realize, hey, okay, now we need new, whether it's CTO or chief commercial officer. Like, do you go outside or inside?
Well, we try to do both usually, and anyways, any role that we open can also be filled with an internal candidate, and we have also our internal pipeline. But of course, in the end, it's about also the competency that you need, and sometimes you just don't have it, right? So just for example, on the commercial side, we were 4 technical founders. It was clear. And also these kind of 20 people that I mentioned, these were all technical people. So it was clear there is no one. Same goes for, let's say, finance, CFO. It was clear that there's no one in the organization who could fill such a role. So then it's pretty clear that we look mainly outside. But if it's a more technical role or also leading product roles, we have been filling actually with internal people. And I think that's the attractiveness of a startup, is that you can grow with the company, right? Often if you have a big corporation, things are very rigid and okay, I have a boss, maybe 50 years old, he will stay there for 10 more years or 15 more years. There's no way for me to go up. But since startups are usually growing, there will always be new roles, new opportunities. And we try to be here also very kind of close to our people, discuss with our people, hey, what do you think we need? Do we need this kind of a profile, that kind of a profile? And from this perspective, I think we have found a pretty good mix of bringing in external competencies, but also letting our own people.
And I'm sure, being a growth company like yours, it is really a kind of selling point for the talent market as well. Typically when we do some project with our customers, that's one of the things we talk a lot actually. Why someone who's working somewhere, they are happy, they have a good team, they are earning good money, why they should ditch all that, take a risk, and join another company. And I think especially actually in this market situation, being able to say that we are a growth company is a good selling point, because I feel like most tech companies are not growing right now. So that is for sure an interesting one. And as you mentioned, a lot of growth opportunities. Maybe lastly, I would like to hear your thoughts about, when hiring people. You talked about competence, and I think, especially on, for example, tech roles, I imagine that you have quite clear understanding of the tech competencies that you need for a person to succeed. But how about the other side? If you think about culture, values, have you been able to kind of crack the code on how to figure that one out during the recruitment process? Does this person fit our culture?
Well, as I said, of course, you never make it 100% right. And also we had those cases where we then figured out in the end, okay, maybe this wasn't the perfect fit. And usually it's clear then for both sides that it doesn't work, right? Also for the person that comes into a new organization, if the cultural fit is not there, it's also then at some point clear for this person that it doesn't work out. So I don't know if there's a recipe to make it 100% right. Of course, you can try to make it as good as possible. We, of course, always tried. We have a very special culture in our case, since we are so technical. And I mean, we have more than 50% PhDs in the company. So there's really kind of this mindset, and it's very fact-based, but still open open discussions. It's very low hierarchies. And many of those things might be challenging for someone who comes from a big corporation and has seen completely different world. And of course, in the interview process, we try to be very open about this. And we tell this, hey, this is going to be a challenge for you. Do you think you can cope with this? And some people, of course, they do it better than others. And I think so for our case, we always tried to do it right. But in the end, of course, also sometimes it just doesn't work out. And then I think there the advice is to rather act sooner than later, because it doesn't get better. You can try, and this was maybe also sometimes my mistake. I thought, okay, I can try to change the person or try to change the environment, but actually it doesn't work out. So at some point you just have to say, okay, look, I think it's better for all sides if we find a solution.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you got a lot of good ideas about SaaS talent acquisition. If you enjoyed the episode, feel free to share it on your social so others can hear it too. And if you have a topic in mind that you would like me to cover in this podcast, share it with me as well. I'm Samuli, CEO and co-founder in TalentBee, where we help fast-growing SaaS companies in their talent acquisition. Make sure to follow us, make sure to follow this podcast, and have an awesome week. Bye-bye.